thanks everybody. Farah, thanks for coming back again. It's good to see you. And thanks to you, Jeremy and Salika, for being up at all hours of the night, morning, to talk with us. We're super excited to have New Zealand here and to have the All Blacks playing in Washington, D.C. But for our American audience, and let me start by giving a shout out to my daughter, Ashley Hartnett, who's been on all the sessions today. She's coming to her first rugby match on Saturday. And the reason she's coming is she fell in love with New Zealand, in love with the Haka, in love with the ethos of All Blacks rugby. So maybe for the US audience, Farah, you could sort of explain a little bit about what Haka means in Maori culture and sort of why that's such a big part of New Zealand rugby.
Yeah, kia ora, John. Yeah, the Haka is quite a rich and layered ritual. I think it's often referred to as a war dance, but the Haka is way more than that. A Haka is often performed to express strong emotions, whether that's, you know, if somebody's done something amazing, the people that understand how important that is to that person or that team might feel moved to do a Haka. If somebody has passed, like the recent tragic passing of Sean Wainui, who was a Maori All Black and you know, has been part of the Maori All Blacks when they've come to Chicago and so forth, you know, there'll be probably a lot of people that will express their sadness through Haka. So Haka can have lots of different meanings. It's not necessarily a war dance. And for the All Blacks, the first Haka that was performed was way back in 1888-89, and that was when the native team, which was our first commercial venture with rugby, to try and see if that would raise some revenue. And it was a group of Maori players, predominantly Maori players, who went overseas to kind of perform rugby and demonstrate their style of rugby. So the Haka's been a part of New Zealand rugby for quite a long time. And Kamate has become the Haka that's known to be associated with the All Blacks. It's a Ngāti Toa Haka. I'm not sure if Jeremy may have already mentioned this stuff, but it's Ngāti Toa, which is a tribe or iwi in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and Te Raupraha was the chief of Ngāti Toa. And so he composed the Haka, but it has taken on many more meanings since then. And there's a line in the Haka at the start that you might hear this weekend, depending on which Haka they perform. So they might perform kamate, but they might also perform kapa or pango, which was Derek Lardeli helped to compose that Haka. And that is one that the more recent team has put together to reflect the diversity and the value and importance of playing in a black jersey. So in kamate, the first line is kamate, kamate, ka ora, ka ora. Will I die, will I die, will I live, will I live? And I think that reflects what it's like when you go and play rugby in terms of putting everything out there. And it's also become more significant recently with COVID-19, you know, and we've used those lines from the Haka to try and encourage New Zealand rugby, to try and encourage other people to think about resilience and to think about, you know, we're going through a challenging time at the moment, but if we all kind of dig in and work together, we can come out the other end triumphant and surviving. So I think that's kind of what the Haka reflects to us as a people, for Maori and for New Zealanders.
Yeah, it's an incredibly powerful thing to experience and to watch and to listen to. But I imagine then for the players themselves, whether that's in the All Blacks, the Black Ferns, the Maori All Blacks, or any team that sort of experiences Haka before a match, that it uplifts you. And what are those things that you think maybe within that or beyond that explain the incredible success that New Zealand men's and women's rugby has had certainly in the last decade, but obviously, for the last 100 years on the men's side, New Zealand's been either the dominant team or one of the two dominant teams in the world, and that's maintained itself through the professional era. What explains that?
Well, that's I don't have much time to talk about that, John, but I think it's a combination of things. We're at the bottom of the world. We got introduced to rugby through our British ancestors who kind of brought it with them to Aotearoa, New Zealand. And I think it reflected a lot of things and a lot of values that we were trying to base our nation on, and that's this whole idea about mateship, all about this idea of everybody is the same on the rugby field, no matter what ethnicity you are or where you come from in terms of socioeconomic status. So there was a bit of that, and I think it suited our conditions here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And then because of that initial kind of success we had in rugby, it's kind of, we are only a nation of 5 million. So we found something that we really thought, actually, we're quite good at this and we can be world leaders at this game. So we've kind of embraced it. And, as a woman, I grew up with a father who was rugby mad. I had my mum who was anti-tour during the 1981 Springbok Tour protests, and my dad who was, we're playing rugby no matter what. So I kind of had that whole political experience with rugby. I never played it as a girl because it was at that time only considered appropriate for boys and men. And then to kind of like be introduced to it at university and realize just the collegiality, the fact your family, your whānau, which is the Maori word for family, and just the fact that it's such a uniting thing that we all really love. And to just reflect that with Sean Wainui passing away recently, you might see the All Blacks acknowledging his passing in some way, and I'm sure that whatever haka they do will be filled with a lot of emotion because a lot of those players knew Sean, who was only 25 and passed away just earlier this week. So I think there's a lot of emotion, a lot of culture, a lot of identity tied up in rugby for Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Yeah, and the other thing that strikes me is, having lived myself in several different what I would call colonial or post-colonial white-dominated societies, New Zealand is a little bit different where, white people are taught or called by the indigenous name, called Pākehā, and that multiculturalism seems to be, certainly not ideal or perfect, but further along in the way in which New Zealand culture operates, where, even when I lived there, when we were at Otago, God Defend New Zealand was the national anthem. Now you have Aotearoa, and you have a real sort of increase in the kind of inclusivity of Maori and Pacifica culture across the society. What's the kind of secret to that, or how has that sort of been coming about, and what impact has that had on cohesiveness both in rugby and in society as a whole?
Yeah, it's interesting because you can see it kind of does reflect what's happening in society. So at the moment, diversity and inclusion is, what everybody is aiming for. And 30% of our players or participants in rugby are Maori or Pacifica. So we're trying to reflect the people that are passionate about the game, who are playing and volunteering for the game, who are involved in the game. And it's not necessarily trying too hard. It just feels like this should be what we do in terms of including other cultures. So in most teams, there'll be some Māori component. If you think about the Super Rugby clubs in New Zealand at the moment, they are performing their own haka. They've composed their own haka. Now we've got the Women's Super Rugby that's kicking off next year. So there's lots of that diversity and inclusion kind of agenda that's coming through in rugby. But I think for me, those cultures make the whole experience much richer. And if you can get the best out of people and acknowledge their culture, and once again, I've worked closely with Jeremy about this, you do get the best out of your players if they feel they can bring their whole selves to their sport. And that's what we're trying to do in Aotearoa. We're not perfect, you know, like Hinewihi Mohi was the woman who did the national anthem in Te Reo Māori, in the Māori language. And that was a bit of a shock to a lot of people in New Zealand when she did that, you know, and it caused a bit of an uproar. But since then, we think nothing of singing the national anthem in both Māori and English. And, you know, nowadays we've got more Māori being spoken in the news. And Pacifica is such a key element of who we are here in New Zealand. You know, we really are trying to partner better with our Pacific Island nations, and that's why we wanted to include the likes of Fiji and Drua and Moana Pacifica in a revised Super Rugby Aotearoa competition next year.
Yeah, I think that's going to be tremendous for rugby across the Pacific Islands, and I think that's something that's certainly been needed. And it's just a part of, I think, how rugby can kind of promote and support this kind of inclusivity that we want to see around the world. And so it's great to see that happening in your part of the world. I think it's beginning to happen here with some of the initiatives that are taking place in the U.S. And it's a great time to have the All Blacks come to Washington, D.C., to the Capitol. And so we're super excited about that. Now, I'm not going to put you on the spot about anything too difficult, because we know the Black Ferns are going to win the World Cup next year. You know, how do you think the All Blacks are shaping up as a team? They've just won the championship again in the Southern Hemisphere, but you know, it's still very, very close with South Africa, and Australia's started to improve again. So looks like there could be pretty tight competition, and you never know with France at home.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we've all been starved of international test matches. So I think the All Blacks haven't spent a lot of time together. So they're really going to enjoy this game this weekend and put on a show and you know, do what they can to play the best, because they always do. So, and it's interesting around the discussion around who the captain is. You know, we've got Sam Whitelock that's taken the captaincy role, and Sam Cane, who's coming back from a long stint recovering from injury. We've got Ari Savia as a Pacifica man who has demonstrated leadership. And so for us, it's just exciting to be, you know, and I think you've mentioned it throughout the day about the US market and how we really want. We've got a lot of things that we need to focus on in rugby, you know, around player wellbeing and concussion, and we're working on those things. So I think, you know, as someone who's played it, I'm a bit biased, but I really do think that this is an opportunity for the All Blacks to get out there and show the style of rugby that they play. And hopefully that encourages people like your daughter maybe to kind of put on their boots and give it a go. Or if not, come along and watch a game and enjoy it. And with the Black Ferns, just with the Black Ferns, it's their 100th test match when they play up in the Northern Hemisphere, and they too have been even more starved of international rugby. They were meant to have Australia come over, but because of COVID, that didn't happen. So I think they're just really excited to be together as a team. Once again, I'm a bit biased. My husband is the assistant coach, so I'm hoping they perform well so that he comes home and he's happy. But while he's over there, they better kick butt.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be going to the match. My daughter's going with me, my sister-in-law. Their bucket list is to see the All Blacks play. So that's we'll get two of them their first experience, as I'm sure with thousands of spectators here, and many who've loved rugby for a long time who've never had an opportunity to see the All Blacks. This is just a tremendous thing for us. And, you know, obviously, popularity in the USA and, you know, the hopeful revenue that comes in from touring here will also help continue to support and develop rugby in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And so I really want to thank you, Jeremy, for staying up all hours and kicking us off beautifully this morning, and then finishing off this afternoon U.S. time. We've got 3 days of exciting events leading up to the match on Saturday, which will be Sunday your time, since you're always a day ahead of us, pretty much. So thank you, and great to see you both again, and you know, all the best to New Zealand Rugby and for the future, and we'll hope to see you guys down there next year for the World Cup.
Definitely look forward to welcoming anyone who wants to go through their whole MIQ process and come to New Zealand. Maybe we won't have MIQ and our borders will be open, but you're most welcome to come down to Aotearoa, New Zealand. So thank you, John, for this opportunity. Kia ora.
Yeah, thank you. Take care.